Changing tattoos. A lot of times people may get a tattoo that they don't particularly care for, a name or maybe a handmade tattoo that they may like when they first get it, but as time goes by, not be too happy with it. In that case, they have the option of either changing it to another design or covering it. Depending on what the design is, how light or dark it is, where it's placed, determines whether you can change it or whether you have to cover it up. This particular tattoo was done by a person with little or very little experience or had not been taught properly. And if you look, you'll see a lot of lines, which this is all this is an outline, where you'll see a heavy line here, very light line here, and in some instances no line at all. Some of the leaves are very dark. It looks like it may have been done with an outliner that was actually too big for the design. Some of the leaf points have balls on the ends of them, and they shouldn't be that way. It should come down into sharp points. So once again, this is a person with little or no experience, and this is what you can have if you don't shop around. Looking at this design, she doesn't want to cover it. She wants to keep it. So what would have to be done is go along the entire outline, re-outline it, and get all the lines that are light to at least the thickness of the lines that are the darkest. And in some cases, you may even have to doctor up some of these because they're powdery looking or whatever. Once you have the outline completely done, you would go into the next step, which would be the shading process. Depending on what the customer wants, in this particular instance, she wants this all done in a black and gray style. We would just go from the bottom, put whatever, this is a tree design, put all the wood grain in it, go back in, shade the tree to make it look as natural as possible. This particular design, it's going to have to be re-outlined and shaded. I want to start, when you're redoing a tattoo, you don't necessarily have to start at the bottom. When you're doing stencil work, you really need to start at the bottom and work your way up so you don't wipe your stencil away. But on this particular, when you're redoing them, you can start anywhere you want to. You can start at the top and work your way down. You can start at the bottom and work your way up. I'm going to start at the top and work my way down so I'm not putting my hand in areas where I've already worked. So we're going to start up here in the leaves and try to get these lines all looking as uniform as we possibly can. Some of these are very light, some are very dark. And some you can't see really at all. And I'm going to start in the lower portion of this limb here, or arm, and again you'll touch down, make sure you're getting a good feed for your ink, just push it along until you see the pigment come out. And then with the shader, depending on the type of shading you want to do, you just push your ink around into the places that you want it. And once you've got your puddle, then you go in that puddle and guide your ink. As you can see very little of what's going on, but when you wipe it, you've got a nice soft little shade stroke there. Again, you push your pigment out, go back in, circular motion, small circular motion, wipe, and there you've got the nice soft shading that you're looking for on this particular design. Okay, when you're applying colors, pretty much the same as outlining, with the exception you're not dragging the machine along to do a line, you're putting in color. So when you're applying color, you want to move in small circles. And again, waiting for that little familiar vibrating feeling, which the more you do it, the more you'll be able to recognize that feeling. Once you feel that vibration, go ahead and start moving your machine in that circular motion. Now, some of these leaves have got a lot of black in them from the previous tattoo, and don't let that bother you, because you can use that old pigment as shading for the new tattoo. So just go right over that old pigment with your green. Green is considered a dark color. Go right over the top of it and leave a little highlight in there somewhere, normally at the top, for a little lighter green. You don't necessarily have to do it all one shade of green. Okay, what I've done here is gone back in the outline and applied some green. You'll see that some of these leaves, like I said earlier, are colored in solid. Some aren't. The ones that you can leave a highlight in, I've done to try to put a lighter green in there toward the end of the tattoo. And you can see it's fairly solid in here, even though we're going over an old one. You can still make a tattoo stand out even though it's got kind of a crappy outline or whatever. You can bring it back to life, and you can put color over that old pigment.